Hello folks, I'm back again with a new video. In our previous video, we have discussed about props and JSX, right? And in this video, we are diving deep into React hooks and we'll cover not only the basics but also some advanced hooks with detailed examples. By the end of this video, you will be able to deal with hooks to build powerful React applications. Yeah, let's get this party started. Hooks were introduced in 16.8 version of React.js. Hooks are the functions that lets you to use state and other React features without writing classes. So before 16.8, we used to write classes and use these states and other features of React. But after 16.8, we can use these functions from functional components also. So that's what 16.8 is introduced. Rules for hooks. We have two rules for React hooks. Firstly, only call hooks at the top level. Do not call hooks inside loops, conditions, or nested functions. And secondly, only call hooks from React functional components or the custom hooks that we have created. So these are the two rules that you need to follow. useState. useState hook is one of the most fundamental hooks in React. It allows functional components, to manage states. So the most common hook we use in our React programming is the useState hook, which allows the functional components to manage their state. And yeah, consider the following example. We have a counter example, and we are using React. Along with React, we are using useState hook. And see, we have defined a function called counter, and this is one of the rules. We need to include the hooks only at top level domains only. We cannot use them inside functions, inside loops, inside conditional statements, likewise, right? So we are using state. Initially it's set to 0. This is the count variable, and this is a setter variable. Set count is a setter for this count. So we update count using this set count. See this. We are calling set count to update a count by 1 on clicking the button. Like we have a button say click me. When user clicks on this particular button, the count gets updated every time he clicks. So after doing this, we need to add route, right? So yeah, we have added imported it, and we have added the route also. So copy this path URL, and if I say slash, yeah, here we are. You click it 0 times. Initially the count is set to 0, right? So it is using a state initially, so 0. If I say initially say 12, then it should start from 12. So you click, initially it is going to use this particular use state whatever we give. So initially let it be 0. Yeah, you click 0 times. So when you click, it's incremented, right? So how many times you may click, it keep on incrementing its count, so depending upon its state management. Use effect. So what is a use effect? What is a use effect? Use effect is a hook that lets you perform side effects in functional components. So side effects, in a sense, it could be data fetching, subscriptions, or manually changing the DOM. So using use effect, you can allow changes only once when the page is rendered, which means that say you have went into a page and there is an effect going on, and if you want to take that effect only once when the page is rendered, you can use effect function. So the syntax is, see, this is what the syntax is within this use effect. So this is all the code we have written. So this is the syntax till right here and starting with here, and that's it. That's how your use effect looks like. And use effect takes two arguments, a function where you write side effect code. I mean, this is the side effect code, and an optimal array of dependencies. Like this is the dependency array that ensures only like this effect runs only once when the page is rendered, and this effect runs after every render by default, but you can control when it runs using the dependency array. In this example, this is a timer component that increments every second using use state and use effect. So use effect ensures that this is happening only once, and use state includes this state is managing accordingly as per the timer is incrementing. Like we have included for every 1,000 milliseconds, we are going to increment a timer by 1 second. Okay, this is what the initialization of seconds and the set seconds variable. We are using initially 0 as a state, and seconds and set seconds are the constants, I mean the variables. So second is a variable seconds, and we are setting the value for seconds using this setter variable. And now let's use effect hook to set up a timer inside use effect. And we use set interval to increment the seconds. Like this is a set interval, right? With this set interval is used to increment the second state after every 1,000 milliseconds. And this is the cleanup function. This is a clean interval. This function clears the interval when component unmounts or before the next effect runs. So that prevents memory leaks, which means that, simply saying, it won't run again and again when it meets its condition. Okay, and we are printing that timer this particular seconds, and let's see how it runs. Like I have already included in the app.js file. This is, like, here it is, which is timer element is timer. And when I run this, yeah, you could see starting from 0 seconds and keep on incrementing its state from 1 second to 1 second. When it reaches its count by 9, we are stopping it because we need only 10 seconds, right? In this example, so stop the timer at 10 seconds, like I was stopping. And if you see this, after 9 seconds it stopped, right? When you refresh the page, it again start from 0 seconds only. It is not continuing from 9, right? So that's what use effect comes into picture. If you think our content is worthy, please like the video and consider subscribing to the channel. This use context hook is one of the powerful features of React hooks that allows you to share state across our components without using props. Say you have a component and you have many components likewise. So there is a state that needs to be transferred from one component to another component. So we previously used props, right, to transfer data from one component to another. So, but we can do that without using props. We use context. So to access the elements inside this particular component to this component, we also use context hooks. Yeah, let's understand use context hook with some example. Like we are going to use state, right? So we are including use state, like I have already told you. Use state is one of the most commonly used hook, right? We majorly use state for managing states. Yeah, we are creating an object using create context function, so which is a count context that is used for managing count variable. This counter provider is our actual component, so which has use state to initialize count to 0. Use state which is initialized to 0, and we wrap our children with the count context dot provider with some value which is count and set count right here. And this hook is at functional component, right? Use state hook is at functional component, and we are creating this context also from the global itself. And this count context or provider is passing down the count and set count as values. This makes them accessible to the child components. And say we have counter display function to display the count whenever it gets incremented, and counter button, like when you say increment it, the count gets incremented by 1, okay, on click action. And yeah, we are using this use context right here also to manage this set count variable. Using set count only we increment the count value, right? And this function app is the main thing that holds counter provider, like counter display and this counter button within counter provider, this counter provider which consists of children, this counter display and counter button. Yeah, that's it. And we are exporting this app, and after this we are calling this, like we are linking to app.js for path, say hooks. Of course we have included this counter provider. And when we save this, and yeah, initially its increment, its count is 0. When we hit on increment, it's keep on incrementing, right? Like previously for use state also we just did like this. But what's the specialty, like when we discuss its structure, we have this app, right? So when app, we are calling this counter provider, and after this, when initially counter provider is set to count 0, right? Initially it is 0, and this counter button is called on clicking increment button. So after clicking that particular increment button, the count is incremented to 1, and the counter button remains same. So that's what about use context. Let's talk about useReducer. useReducer is a hook that is similar to useState, but it is ideal for managing state transitions based on some complex logic. Say previously, while using useState, we used only one increment button, and when we click on it, the count gets incremented, right? So what if we have some multiple states to be managed? Say we have an increment button, we have a decrement button, and we have some reset button, so that when we click on increment, it's get incremented. On decrement, it gets decremented. On reset, it's the state gets neutralized and set to 0. So to manage these kind of such, large number of states, we go with using useReducer. useReducer hook will let you to manage complex states in a simple way using useState. Okay, we can use this for a simple way. So consider this following example where we are creating an increment, a decrement, and a reset button. So on increment, we are incrementing its state by 1. On decrement, we are going to decrement the count value by 1. And of course, on reset, it is set to 0. If there is any error, it gets cut. Initially, the state is 0. And yeah, dispatch is something that we need to look over. So when the state gets changed, the dispatch function is called right here, right? On click, dispatch function is called. So either incrementing or decrementing, the dispatch sends that particular state to the state current state, and that's how dispatch is used. And we are exporting the default counter variable. I have set this to app.js also. So this is the element, and with this link hooks, and then open up our development server. If you see this, yeah, we have a count variable, right, which is initialized to 0. On incrementing, it is getting incremented. On decrementing, the count getting decremented. On reset, it is set to 0 wherever it is. So but in case of use state, we can handle a single state. For more complex state handling, we go with use reducer. Of course that could be similar to use state, but with more complexity. Yeah, use reference. Use reference is a hook that allows you to persist values across renders without causing a re-render. So it is used for two important things. When we need to access DOM elements directly, like every DOM will have some set of elements, right? So to access those elements directly, And secondly, to store mutable values that do not want a requirement. Say we have some set of elements where they are fixed and do not require any re-renders. So then we go with using use reference hook for them. Let's see use reference with some example. In our case, we are using a text input where we are going to see what's happening, like we are going to see the focus before submitting the input field and after submitting the input field, and how the focus is going to change. So focus before is a variable and we are going to create a setter and it is using null. Similarly, focus after, and from document we are going to get the active element where based on its tag name, and then we are going to focus on the current element when focus input is performed. We are calling this focus input whenever the on click event, like whenever this focus input button is clicked. We have a text input first, we have a focus input button, and when this button is clicked, this focus input is called. So this focus input consists of uh, what it is focusing on in the DOM. So particular currently, so previously and later. And then we are rendering them as a paragraph. Let's give it a try. Yeah, this is what our input field is, right? So let's say programming stuff, and when I submit it, before it is focusing on button, and after clicking it is now the focus is now shifted into input. So, like we are directly accessing this from the DOM, right? So that's what to access DOM elements, and if it does not require any re-renders, we use reference. useMemo is a hook that allows you to memorize the result of a function call. Like whenever a function is called and it is going to give you some result, the result is memorized, so that the memorized result will be used in its next computation. So to reduce its time complexity, it means that if the dependencies you provide do not change, React will return the cached value instead of recalculating it. This can be particularly powerful and useful for optimizing performance in computations. In components that perform heavy calculations, or if it is going to render large lists, then it can be useful. Say in this example, we have a function called factorization where we are going to deal with factorization right in this example, and we have a number, variable number, and we are going to set the value of number using its setter variable, and initially it is going to use state 0. So this is the main function, I mean the main working function actually. And this is a variable for factorial which is going to use memory, and which is calling compute factorial for the given number, this number, and which is an array of list of numbers. And this is an input field which takes a percent integer, and after computing this calculation, we are going to return that number, the particular factorial. Finally we export it. So this compute factorial, if number is less than or equals to 1, we are going to return 1, which means that it is not possible. Else we compute, I mean we calculate the factorial. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, here we are. Initially it is set to 0, right? On incrementing its count, it is 1. So when we say keep on incrementing, see it is calculating very fast, because every function, every value that is returned by a function is already catched. Say we have a function and it is returning some value, so this value is stored into cache. So it is stored into cache. When a new function is called, and if it requires, and say if it is greater than this number, say previously it is 2, now it is 4, so 4 is greater than 2, right? So after 2 it starts computing 4. So we have already the 2 factorial, start computing, take this 2 factorial and start computing from here, and we get a 4 factorial. store that in cache. If it requires another time, we use that. So that's how use memory, use memo hook will use for you, will be useful. Use callback. Use callback is a hook that returns the memorized version of a callback function. And it is useful when you want to prevent unnecessary re-renders of functions on every render. So what's happening exactly is, say you have a function and this function has some functionality to do. So whenever you are going to re-render a component, you are going to memorize this function that has some particular task. So this is memorized. Okay, the function is memorized. Then whenever this component is going to be re-rendered again, then this memorized function is called. We are not going to create that function again and again. Whenever this component is going to be rendered, we are just going to memorize the function, and we are going to render the functional component whatever it is. The functions are created whenever, every time the component is going to be rendered. But in case of this use callback, we just memorize the function and call the function whenever the page is going to be re-rendered. Finally, optimizing the performance of the page. Yeah, in our example, we have a function called button, and we are going to memorize the button, and we are going to re-render it whenever the component is going to be re-rendered. Okay, we are going to call the memorized version of button. Say we have a function called use callback hook. So for understanding, and we have count and set count. Of course, we increment the count value, and yeah, this is the function. This is the basic syntax for this use callback. This is the function, and we are creating a handle click object to manage the count variable, I mean the count state whenever the button is clicked. And in this return, we have a div which consists of count variable, and it is the count variable final. When the user is clicked and the count gets updated, you can see the count using this JSX syntax. And we have a button, like we created the button right here, right? And we are calling this and creating a function handle click, which handles the click. See here is the handle click. Finally, we are exporting as the default function, like I have already done the routing. Use callback hook. Whenever the page is rendering, it is the button is re-rendered, which is the memorized version. And say you click me, again it is re-rendered and the count is 1. Say you click it, again it is re-rendered and the click and the count is 2. Yeah, that's it for today's video, guys. If you like the content, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.